Today, a special edition of Future Forward, the future of food.
Will the Impossible Burger replace meat with a plant-based burger?
Food delivery services are at war.
And the very nature of grocery stores are changing.
Food, how to make it, buy it, and cook it, all changing very fast. I'm Steve Rosenbaum, and this is Future Forward.
I'm Alexis Scordato. Let's launch.
So, I'm not going to lie, this could be a really delicious episode. It really could. I mean,
Super yummy.
Super yummy. I was like, I should do research for this one. So we've got 3 chapters in today's show. We're going to do new kinds of food, gluten-free, vegan, vegetarian, Impossible Burger, all that stuff. Then we're going to get into delivery battles with Uber Eats, DoorDash, Postmates, and all the good stuff. And then chapter 3 is groceries, Whole Foods, Wallmart, and a surprise up-and-coming brand that probably people know. Before we do that, I just want to say a huge shout out to our friends at IEEE Spectrum. Great technology publication. I was going to say magazine, but really it's more online than it is in print at this point. And they've got a terrific segment about the future of steak when we get to the meat section. But let's just start with a little bit of level setting in terms of our mutual dietary things. Are you? I should know this, and I don't. Like, are you a picky eater? Are you a difficult food person?
So I would say my default is I am that really annoying foodie person who starts meals by taking photos of their food, and I follow the eater heat maps, and I watch Chef's Table. Like, I'm annoying to most people, but I got really serious about my health a couple of years ago, and I was on an elimination program, elimination diet. Basically, I removed gluten, dairy, grain, soy, sugar, alcohol, which was just ironic at the time because I own a cocktail blog. And so I mostly eat gluten-free and dairy-free, and I very much limit processed sugars and starches.
So this is like
my jam. Like,
yeah.
I'm like, oh, I have things to say.
So here's mine. I did gluten-free on a bit of a lark 3 years ago, and it made me feel better, and so I've pretty much stuck to it. But other than that, gluten is a lot. So no wheat. But other than that, I'm pretty much. Yeah, and I don't know if I'm a foodie. By the way, I don't know what the Eater heat map is.
Oh, so Eater's like this really popular food blog, and they keep a heat map, which is basically a current list of all of the new restaurants that have heat, basically, are rising in popularity.
Oh, all right.
Tough tables to get.
So already I've learned something. I'm off to the Eater heat map after this. All right. So let's just start right at the top. Let's start with chapter 1, new foods. So let's do the Impossible Burger because it is the thing everyone's talking about, and it's a big deal. And have you had one?
I have. They're delicious.
They're See, I had one. I had a bite. It was at a sampling thing, and I had a bite. It tasted fine, but I was at a restaurant the other day, and they had it on the menu, and I didn't order it, and I don't know why.
Oh, interesting. So I live down the block from a Bear Burger, and I actually think the Impossible Burger is better than the regular burger.
Interesting. So it would be fun to ask a vegan that. I mean, they wouldn't have anything to compare it to because theoretically they haven't eaten meat in a long time, or maybe never. So let's talk about the battle. Like, what's going on in the protein space? Like, is the change that we're seeing on the horizon environmental or philosophical or animal rights? Like, what do you think is driving the sense that there is going to be a big change in the way people make and consume meat?
I actually think it's a combination of environmental factors and animal rights activists. Like, so there's old school people, just vegetarians, classic traditional vegetarians who are vegetarian because they either feel bad for animals or they do it for health reasons. They want to lower their cholesterol, etc. I think there's a wave of people who've been more conscious of the environmental footprint of meat and are choosing to give it up. And I think in general, consumers are just trying to eat more vegetables. And so they just naturally think more veggies equals healthy.
So there's an article that we pulled from The Spoon that talks about kind of what's happening in alternative protein, and they come up with this conclusion, which I found interesting, which is that media holds the key to this change. That food scientists and the way media covers the story could trigger this shift. That would be us, I guess.
I don't disagree with it. So I think I'm biased. I'm a marketer. So for me, everything is about marketing. What's interesting to me is that the way we are talking about food and the consumption of it is actually not very different from tech. Every consumer today kind of wants choice. They want bespoke things, things that are made for them. And I think we as consumers are so spoiled by all of this choice. And so it doesn't surprise me that the market is dictating this trend that says consumers want to choose whether or not their burger is meat or not, or whether their milk is from a cow or from a nut. You're just kind of seeing that everywhere. And it's very in vogue for people to talk about food as something that is a luxury, something that is a convenience, and something that the more, I guess, mainstream it is, like the more with it you are. Like I think oat milk is one of the biggest trends right now, where if oat milk is on the menu, that's like where you have to get your matcha latte in New York.
Fascinating. I am not an oat milk drinker yet, but I might be. But I like almond. I like almond milk. So.
Yeah, I mean, like going dairy free is like super on trend. Not eating meat on trend. It's like that. It's like an Instagram filter.
So let's talk about this IEEE article about the race to make great steak, because that's different, right, than what's happening with the Impossible Burger battle. And I found their take on it actually terrifically interesting. I guess it really comes down to, are you taking plant-based materials and essentially impersonating the texture and flavor of burgers, or are you actually manufacturing meat without a creature in a lab? And I didn't realize that Unilever was, of course it makes sense, right? But like, I guess I don't think of Unilever as where I'm going to get my next great fake steak, as IEEE pointed out.
Right. It's interesting. I think there are two buckets of eaters, or vegetarian eaters, or fake steak eaters. There are the ones who actually really don't like the taste of meat, and there are the ones that do and want a good substitute. So it's anecdotal, but I've just found that talking to vegetarians that they usually fall in one of those two buckets. Like the Impossible Burger for some vegetarians actually tastes too much like meat.
So why would you ever get a plant-based burger if you didn't like the taste of meat? What?
You might be, I mean,
why wouldn't you just
might
get a
be
veggie
hosting
burger?
something. Well, so some people do, right? But some people are maybe hosting an event and their preference is to not eat meat, but their guests want a real burger or something that tastes like a real burger.
So you think about the future a lot. That's part of why I enjoy this podcast. Like, so when you imagine, there will be a date in the future where like meat will not be on the menu? Like it'll be either be cell-based but not based on an animal, or it'll be vegetarian but like actual, like the cattle production industry will come to an end?
I don't know if we'll ever eliminate it altogether, but I think we are seeing the rise of vegan restaurants. There are chains like By Chloe in New York or Double Zero Pizza, where it's gluten-free, dairy-free, meat-free, and they're full. They're packed.
So I'll read you a quote from the Spectrum article. It's quoting now: "Cows are a remarkably inefficient food source. Barely 4% of the calories a cow eats become beef that people can eat. Producing 1 kilogram of protein from beef uses about 18 times as much land, 10 times as much water, 9 times as much fuel, and 12 times as much fertilizer, and 10 times the amount of pesticides to produce the same amount of protein from kidney beans. That's terrible.
It is terrible.
I mean, and part of what I think has changed, and I don't know when it happened, but I think about, particularly among young people that I know, like vegetarian and vegan are really different verticals. Vegetarian's a lifestyle choice. Vegan is a political choice, right? I mean, I was at a restaurant the other morning, and the woman next to me asked the server to make sure that the potatoes, it was a breakfast restaurant, the potatoes weren't cooked in any animal product oil.
Yes.
And that struck me as more, not health related, but political. Like, I don't want anything animal related near my, I was in San Francisco, so it wasn't that surprising.
Yeah.
But I also think, maybe we'll jump from meat versus plant protein, and let's jump to gluten for a minute. So when did you start gluten free? How many years ago?
A couple years ago. Yeah.
So I think if you tried to eat gluten free 5 years ago, it was really hard.
Yes.
I think
I was working with a client who represented celiac. One of their consumers or targets were celiac. People diagnosed with celiac disease.
Yeah.
And I just remember 5-10 years ago thinking it was so prohibitive to go out and eat if you couldn't have gluten.
For listeners who are not in the gluten-free nomenclature, celiac is the medical condition that makes gluten bother your insides. You can be gluten-free without being celiac. And in fact, many restaurants, if you say, do you have that gluten-free, they'll say, are you celiac? Because their kitchen may or may not be actually set up for absolute gluten intolerance, but they may have gluten-free meals, but they may have cross contamination. And I get asked that a lot. Like, is it a allergy or is it a dietary choice? And it's not. What's interesting is the question isn't asked in a pejorative way. It's restaurants have become much more concerned about safety and food safety, which is good. But the other thing, and this is probably another whole show, but there is a debate among the gluten-free world that essentially says, what's happened is, because of certain pesticides, gluten has become like people have become more intolerant because gluten has become more polluted. Is not the word I mean exactly, but that there's actually a pesticide-related issue that makes it much less tolerable as a food source.
If you read about gut health, and this could be a whole other show. Basically, there's a lot of research emerging that says that gut health, like our intestines and how our body breaks down food, that there's a lot of dysfunction happening, and we aren't remedying it. We're not diagnosing that problem, and it's leading to all these autoimmune disorders. All
right, so we'll leave health for another day. Let's go to chapter 2, delivery. Confession, I never understood Uber Eats. I still don't understand it.
Why? What don't you understand? You were at Uber, right? Yeah.
Because deliveries I live in New York. You live in New York. Because I think of delivery as a bicycle, sidewalky thing, and I think of automotive as I just don't know how Uber works as a delivery service. I mean, and I have friends who are Uber drivers who've said they tried to do Uber Eats and it just didn't fit in with their Uber rhythm.
I mean, this gets into like the core of what Uber's trying to be. And when they relaunched their brand guidelines a few years ago, they had this whole big video about atoms and bits and how at the core of their why, they're just really a transportation logistics company, whether it's moving atoms of people or food, your pizza down the block. That's what they're going to do.
So tell us a great delivery story that you've had, and tell us I'll trade you for a terrible delivery story.
A great delivery
I don't
story?
know, like,
I
is
just
it?
feel like I've had so many. How many
Uh,
times have I been sick or working late on the job or just in a bind in terms of like, oh, our caterer didn't come and now I need to just scramble to get 24 people lunch in a conference room. I feel like all of these delivery services have saved my butt, personally or professionally, in one way or another.
all right, so I'll trade you. So my younger son, a couple of summers ago, decided that he was going to do Postmates, and
Do it like order from it or
no,
like be a Postmates
no,
delivery
be a
person?
delivery person for the summer.
Oh, okay.
He had a bike. He wanted to be out and around the city. He was going to and he did fine. Made a little bit of money, but the stories he told about the number of people that answered the door essentially naked or like in a untied bathrobe, like he definitely crossed into another world of the way people treat, you know, delivery people, that he found pretty shocking.
That's horrible. For those of you who can't see my face, I'm making lots of distorted facial
Yeah,
expressions
it's
with every
horrible.
single one of Steve's sentences.
And also, you know, he would be one place and Postmates would say, go pick up essentially a hamburger. It was mostly picking up, you know, burgers and fries, and deliver it 14 blocks east for what amounted to $3. Like it was a very, very, very hard way to make a living.
I've heard this anecdotally from people like as I've gone in to wait for food, like takeout, I've sat there with Postmates and seamless delivery people, and I've just asked them, like, how's this going for you? And I do this with Uber and Lyft drivers too. So as a consumer, I actually love all of these technologies and services, but I actually think it's really, really different on the other side.
So let's talk about this Amazon investment, because this is a surprising one. Amazon just led a $575 million investment in a food delivery startup called Deliveroo, which I have never heard of.
So I actually heard of Deliveroo because when I used to go to work in London, Deliveroo was the dominant platform for ordering food.
So why does Amazon invest in a food delivery service? Like what's like I mean they because they want to own it, because they I mean what is there to buy? You're essentially buying, you know, a staff and bicycles.
I think if you look at their entire operation, they're trying to like anything in the supply chain management ecosystem, whether that's retail and goods or food to consumer, they want in on the action. And so they bought Whole Foods and they sell food products on regular Amazon. This is just another capability that they're adding to their stack.
So let me read you just a little bit of a bite from the Forbes article that was where we got to deliver. Amazon is leading a $575 million investment into the fast-growing food delivery service Deliveroo. The funding round, set to close in the coming months, will bring the total investment in the London headquartered business up to 1.53 billion. I've run a bunch of companies. You've worked for a lot senior management, a lot of companies. Like, what do you do with 1.53 billion in the bank? Except lose money on every delivery, right?
Yeah, I mean this is where like the economies of scale and these big mega tech companies, I don't even really understand how you operate like this anymore because it's not about profitability. It's about mind share, brand, being a dominant player in a specific category. And I think this investment was just Whole Foods saying loud and clear, when it comes to food and getting consumers food, we're doubling down on that.
The math is they didn't actually release the current valuation, but it said that when they raised their the 482 million last September of 2017, they were valued at 2 billion. So presumably, if they've got another, so they're now doubling that. Let's assume they're at 4 billion. So they're a $4 billion food delivery. I mean, it You know what it all comes down to? It's all the last mile. It's from wherever the head end is, whether it's a restaurant or a warehouse or a food. It's getting that last little jaunt, which requires a human and some mode of transportation and a software service that says we're going to do. I mean, I assume it's some version of what Uber does well, which is to say we're going to figure out we have a car nearest to you. We're going to show you where it is on a map, and we're going to get it to you most quickly.
It's wild. Like, so thinking about this episode today and what we were going to talk about, it's just nuts because I'm in this dilemma. It's Sunday at the meal plan, and here are my choices. I can walk to Trader Joe's down the block. I can order from Whole Foods on Amazon, or I can go walk to a farmer's market and maybe take an Uber back, or I can actually just be lazy and not cook and order takeout from any one of these delivery services. And so I think what ties this together, Steve, is chapter 1 and chapter 2 is this idea that, like, as a consumer, I want choice. And so if I want to order my dairy-free milk on Amazon, or potentially order from my favorite vegan restaurant in a different neighborhood, I can now do that. And it's a question of whether my allegiance or who I think of first is aiding me in that is Uber or Amazon. And that's incredible because those are two brands that just didn't exist in my head in this category 5 years ago.
It's fascinating. All right, so let's get to grocery because grocery has a surprise ending in it. When Amazon bought Whole Foods, there were a bunch of questions, right? I mean, were they going to ruin it? Were they going to make it better? Were they going to change it? Were they going to screw with it? Was it going to be rebranded Amazon Whole Foods? And they've actually done, I think, a pretty disciplined job of changing it just a little bit. I mean, it's a little cheaper if you've got an Amazon Prime membership, and there are things inside the store that give you a little tap on the shoulder that Amazon's there, but they haven't destroyed it, and they made it a little cheaper.
I didn't complain about that.
I wonder internally if Bezos looks at that investment and feels good about it.
I think he has to. There's like nothing more personal than mealtime. It's something that everyone on the planet has to experience. And if Amazon is going to continue to seep into every aspect of our lives, what better vehicle to do that than how we eat?
Well, all right, let me ask the question a different way. I mean, we know, Jeff, part of what makes Amazon interesting is that they're kind of slow growth, long-term investors. But I mean, do you think Whole Foods is making money? Is it profitable?
Some of it is just like progressive profiling. So when you think, again, from a New Yorker perspective, the type of person who is shopping at Amazon in a certain way was also probably the type of person who was shopping at Whole Foods in a certain way. And to actually be able to link that as a single identity now is really powerful.
So have you ever bought groceries from Walmart?
Yes.
I've been in a Walmart, but didn't know there was a I did know there was a grocery component, but wouldn't ever imagine buying groceries at Walmart.
So it's so interesting you mentioned that because I was at a Walmart, a super Walmart in Pennsylvania, the kind of Walmart where you could buy a gun, a goldfish, and goldfish crackers. So it had groceries, plants, like home things, clothing, like literally everything. And I said to myself, wow, this is the closest thing I would imagine it feels like to walk through an Amazon store in the sense that it had everything.
So did you leave with a cart full of super bargain groceries? Did you buy like the 40-pack tissue box?
Yeah, so I was outside of New York, so it was already cheaper. But then the fact that, I don't know, it was like 24 hot dogs for 99 cents, I was just like blown away.
So the answer is that if you are in a family that has 6 children, you need to shop at a Walmart. That makes sense to me. And you need a big house with a pantry, and you need to be able to buy things in bulk. But Walmart doesn't have a grocery footprint in New York.
No.
nor do they seem to. I mean, I guess maybe it's just not. But what we found this article on Cincinnati.com with a surprising headline, because it turns out that Kroger may be the winning grocery player in the Amazon Walmart wars. And I mean, I know what Kroger is. I know it's a supermarket, but I just assumed that Amazon and Walmart were going to crush every local regional chain. And you seem to think you understood the Kroger argument. So explain it to me.
So I used to live in Washington, D.C., and I lived across the street from a Harris Teeter that is owned by Kroger's. I have relatives in Canada who shop at Loblaws. I lived in Boston. So I've experienced regional grocery stores. And I actually think there's something about a consumer that doesn't want Amazon or Walmart to win. They actually want the sort of, I don't know, underdog. Not that Kroger is small by any means, but in some ways they're shopping local. And so there's an aspect to that. Too, I actually think when it comes to local heritage brands, like, oh, my mom used to take me to Key Food, like there's nostalgia that comes with that. And I don't know, there's always going to be this tension, I think, between companies that are too big and then people investing in the smaller brands, whether that's their local bodega down the block or Kroger's.
So my college supermarket and then my town after college was Price Chopper.
Price Chopper?
Price Chopper. You see, because it just rolls off my tongue, but not yours. It's Price Chopper.
Did it have like a helicopter as a logo?
No, it had an Indian with a hatchet.
Oh man.
Yeah. Yep.
That's why I don't know them now.
Yeah. Sorry. And they have not, to the best of my knowledge, they still have the Indian with the hatchet, which I know is politically inappropriate, but not my brand, not responsible. All right, so let me just read a little bit from the Cincinnati.com article, and then we'll talk about where Kroger is going. So it said, battered by 2-year price war, waging expensive battles with superior home delivery, Kroger's profits have taken a hit, but has steadily increased sales even as it cuts prices. New market share data shows that Kroger is getting traction in several of America's largest metro areas over the past 2 years. And Kroger is the nation's largest supermarket chain. Besides Kroger stores, the grocer operates several regional supermarket chains, including Fred Meyer, Harris Teeter, Ralph's, Mariano's, Fry's, Smith's, King's Supers, and QFC. Did you know that?
Nope, not the full list.
So when you said Harris Teeters, I didn't want to. So I was like, is that really a name of a? So they're rolling up all these brands. But it's interesting. This comes, I guess if I were thinking long term, the question I would ask is, I get why people who grew up with Harris Teeter as their local supermarket would have a fondness for Harris. I just like saying Harris Teeter a lot. But once the next generation grows up and they're Amazon people, like, isn't this just the slow death spiral? Don't they, doesn't Kroger and all of its little local brands, I mean, because supermarket buying isn't like, it's not like you want the regional food brand. I mean, do you think that it's that the actual markets have a different experience?
What is Wegmans? Wegmans has this cult following, and people are so excited when Wegmans opened a new store here in the tri-state area. Have you been to Wegmans?
No.
No? I can't speak for all of them, but I will say that, yeah, I think there are some stores that maybe have better training on the ground. There are people who ask you for help, or it just has a smaller feel to it. There's an intimacy to that experience, and people want that.
Look, at Trader Joe's, clearly they've made a training of, when you get to the cash register at the checkout after waiting in that insane line for 45 minutes, they're always super nice and like, oh, you're getting the gluten-free. Are you gluten-free? Yeah, me too. Like they always make sure to have a connection. And
Yep.
and as much as I know it's trained and it's clearly part of the job, I still kind of like it. Like,
it's the anti-online shopping experience. I'm actually talking to a person.
That's it. So what you're saying is, in the end, all right, one more mini category, and then we're out of time. So have you ever done any of the grocery delivery services? Have you done Fresh Direct, or Amazon has Amazon Fresh or any of those things?
Yeah, Amazon Now. It's always a debate who has the cheaper LaCroix package for the week. Fresh Direct, the bodega down the block, or Amazon Now.
All right, perfect. Which gets us to a perfect ending. Let's talk for just a second about this Amazon Go store that opened in New York. Have you been yet?
I walked past it and then I immediately was like, I can't do this.
So this for listeners, this is the Amazon store that if you've got Amazon Prime, you can just go in and pick things up and walk out, and it somehow automatically scans what you've touched, or I don't even know how it does it exactly. But you don't even, it's not like a CVS where you have to put it on a scale. It just automatically knows what you've picked up. I guess there's cameras and they surveil you and then notice what you pick up and then charge you without ever having to deal with a cash register.
They don't even accept cash.
So I'm going to argue that this is the one thing I think Bezos is doing fundamentally wrong.
Oh, okay. Why is that?
He wants me to say to the Amazon device, whose name we won't mention in my living room because it will confuse you. He wants consumers to stop caring about price. It's the dash button. He wants people to just say, I need more toilet paper, and for it magically to show up and to not be able to price compare. And I will never be that customer.
I don't disagree, but I think it's smart that he is trying to remove friction in the purchase funnel. He doesn't want people to stop at the price stop sign. He doesn't want people to stop at the long line price stop sign.
I just somehow I would leave and I would just have this. I'd keep checking my phone to see how much did they charge me and did they get it right, and I just would make me uncomfortable. I need some kind of a exchange between my money and his product, so that I know that it's been a fair exchange. Although wait, to be fair, I do like both Uber and Lyft because I don't have to have a payment moment, but I know in advance what the ride's going to be.
Yeah. And you also don't have to worry about, what am I going to tip this person? Nope.
Hate that.
Yeah.
All right, good. We are out of time. That was really fun. Make sure so next week we're going to check back in, and the question we're going to ask is, so what did Alexa eat for dinner last Sunday night? Did she go to the market? Did she Uber back? Because that list you just gave is it's a fact. How many people are doing that Sunday night? What am I doing? How do I balance? Do I just order in? Yeah.
It's only specific today because it's Game of Thrones. The last week I have to figure this out.
I know. And somebody invited us to a cosplay Game of Thrones screening, and we are not going. Not wearing the costumes, not going. Have a great week. Future forward, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.